The movie begins with a news report announcing the presidential candidate has been selected. The news wrap-up ends with an update about a guy saving a girl from a robbery attempt. That's Kim Ganu, a kind delivery driver who always looks out for people. The victim he saved was Sua, a famous rising idol. Gonu gets a medal and a brave citizen title from the cops. He becomes a role model, an example for others to follow. In no time, Gonu gets famous, appearing on TV shows, but he stays humble and keeps doing good for folks around him. One day, Ganu's loading packages into his delivery van. Before he heads out, he always turns on the radio to catch the traffic report, which his ex-wife, Sony Young. On the road, Ganu gets a call from his buddy Juho, who says his shop is almost ready. Ganu can monitor his shop live through a connected surveillance camera on his phone. That shop is his plan for chilling out when he retires from his current job. Ganu's a friendly guy, well-liked by everyone. His job connects him with people, especially those in his delivery zone. But sometimes, his overly nice attitude gets taken advantage of. One time, Ganu's surrounded by kids who think he's a superhero because he saved their idol. Gonu handles it casually, then gets a call from his old friend, Mulyo. They meet on a street to catch up. It turns out they were in an indie band together back in the day, and they were super close, like best friends. Gonu figures Mulyo must need his help if he showed up. When Mulyo admits it and asks why Gonu would bother, he just says, because we're buddies. Gonu steps away for a second to drop off a package nearby. But weirdly, the address is an empty, abandoned building. When Gonu gets back, Mulyo drives off with Gonu's van, claiming it was causing traffic and he just looped back around. At the same time, the motorcade for presidential candidate number 1 comes from the opposite direction. Suddenly, their car blows up, killing everyone inside. Ganu, still waiting, sees the whole thing and is totally shocked. That's when it all clicks. Ganu's been set up by his own friend. Turns out, Mulyo is part of an organization against presidential candidate number 1. The package Ganu was holding was actually a bomb, but Mulyo, still loyal to their friendship, changes his mind and picks Gonu up. He tells him the bomb in the package will explode in 3 minutes after the first blast. Mulyo gives him a number to call for help and tells him to run because his crew will kill him if they catch him. Before driving off with the bomb, Mulyo warns Gonu not to trust anyone. The crew starts chasing Gonu, ordered by a woman from far away. Meanwhile, Mulyo drives the car with the bomb into a parking garage to avoid more casualties. At that moment, Mulyo gets shot by his own crew for betraying them. He blows up with the bomb. Gonu sees his friend die in the explosion, but can't do anything but keep running. Ganu's still being chased by guys in suits. No matter where he goes, they're on his tail. During his escape, Ganu gets a call from Yummy. Yummy's super worried after seeing the explosion news on TV. Ganu heads to Yummy's apartment to hide. There he watches more news about the case, explaining that the explosion was likely caused by an RC car with explosives controlled remotely. That news messes with Ganu's head, especially after he sees RC cars lined up in Yummy's closet. Ganu starts getting suspicious, remembering his friend's last warning not to trust anyone. Even though they seem close, Yummy's new in his life. They met after he became the brave citizen. Turns out Yummy is part of the conspiracy. Her presence was planned to handle situations just like this. Since his identity is blown, Yummy attacks and tries to kill Ganu. But she fails when Ganu accidentally hits her head on a table, knocking her out. At the same time, someone tries to open the apartment door, forcing Ganu to jump out the window and run. A man in a black suit gets into the apartment and starts chasing Ganu, who runs into a crowd. Ganu ducks into a store and hides in the toilet. He calls the number Mulyo gave him earlier, but gets no answer. Just then, the mysterious man realizes Ganu's there and is about to shoot him. Luckily, Ganu escapes right as the guy almost grabs him. As he takes a taxi, news spreads that Ganu has been identified as the presidential assassin. Everyone's shocked because just recently, Ganu was in the public eye, honored for saving the famous idol Sua. The head of the intelligence agency decides to form a joint search team with the police. After the press conference, the police are confused because the intelligence agency has completely taken over the case. They were just window dressing at the meeting with no real role. Meanwhile, Ganu faces a tough choice when his friend Juho at the shop gets grabbed and interrogated by the chasing gang. Their actions are caught on CCTV, and Ganu threatens to report them to the police. But it turns out the gang has an unexpected plan. A guy who looks just like Ganu shows up at the shop and instantly kills Juho. Ganu's shocked and cancels his plan to report them. Now he truly can't escape the accusation, because this conspiracy is perfectly planned. As Ganu leaves, he gets caught and brought to Director Yang, the corrupted head of the intelligence agency, in a car. Turns out, Yang plans to take over Korea from the shadows. He and other corrupt officials have a new presidential candidate ready who will be their puppet to run the government. On the road, a car driven by the mysterious man comes close. He shoots the director's car, making it flip. That's when he jumps in to save Gonu, taking him to a hideout. The man tells Gonu to follow him into the sewer tunnel, saying it's the best place to hide from CCTV. He tells Gonu to hurry because the sewer will open soon, and luckily, they're not late. After going through the sewer, Gonu is brought to the hideout, and that's where everything is revealed. The man is Tuan Min, a former intelligence agent and Mulyo's friend, who knew about the conspiracy. He's helping Gonu because he owes Mulyo from the past. Gonu asks why he's the target. Tuan explains it's because he became a role model for the public. If someone good is believed to have committed a crime, the fooled public will be furious. That way, all attention will focus on him and they'll forget the real facts. But it turns out Tuan has another motive for helping Gonu. He plans to sell him back to the intelligence agency, but he's not asking for money. He wants his own freedom to leave Korea with his daughter. Tuan threatens that if his demands aren't met, he'll expose Gonu and the truth to the public. Tuan Min is forced to do this because he has priorities he must put first. The next day, Soni Young, Gonu's ex-wife, is questioned and asked to cooperate by the intelligence agency. They ask Soni Young to report any calls from Gonu so they can track his location. Soni Young says they're not close anymore and Gonu wouldn't call her. That night, Soni Young goes to Mulyo's funeral. There she meets Gonu's old friends and buddies from their youth band, Donbu and Jemko. As friends, they don't fully believe the news. Same goes for Soni Young, who starts worrying about her ex-husband. Elsewhere, a second press conference is happening, and Tuan sneaks into the event. He threatens the intelligence agency director to grant his request, but the director isn't scared and issues a warning. Anyone trying to protect or hide the suspect will be punished severely. Feeling he has no other choice, Tuan Min leaves the building after taking down one of the intel agents chasing him. In the end, he lets Gonu go because he doesn't want to get caught as a criminal accomplice. When Tuan's car breaks down, Gonu actually helps him push it. He's not mad because he knows Tuan is doing it for his family. When the car starts, Tuan Min can't bring himself to leave him, and they both go together. Meanwhile, the corrupt officials attend a meeting to discuss their new puppet presidential candidate. It's also revealed that the intelligence agency director is actually under their control. On the way, Tuan explains how the intelligence agency really works. In this conspiracy, someone was made to look like Gonu through plastic surgery. That way, they'd have solid proof that the media would believe, even if the guy didn't look exactly like him. People would believe it because they'd already be angry. Basically, this is a fabrication created by the government and the media. When Gonu asks why he's the victim, Tuan explains that anyone could have been the target as long as they could be exploited. Ultimately, Tuan Min and Gonu team up to expose this conspiracy. The first step is to find the doctor who performed the plastic surgery on the Gonu lookalike. Tuan asks a friend for help collecting a list of problematic surgeons because the intelligence agency wouldn't use a clean surgeon for this conspiracy. Tuan Min says one of these doctors must have met Gonu to study his face shape. When Gonu sees a photo of one doctor, he remembers Yumi introduced him as her cousin. Looking into his activity details, it turns out the doctor is going through a divorce. Gonu remembers his friend Donbu as a divorce lawyer, so he calls his friend to ask for the doctor's files and all info about him. But unfortunately, the intelligence agency finds out, and Donbu is forced to tell them they'll meet somewhere. Soni Young and Jemko get mad, thinking Donbu sold out his friend, but it turns out the real meeting place is only known by them, the spot where they took photos for their band poster. Since Donbu is too scared to hand over the files, Gemko agrees to go in his place. The next day, Tuan drops Gonu off at the meeting spot. He tells Gonu to take a tracker and a listening device to help him if anything goes down. The place reminds Gonu of his past, because that's where he and Soni Young first got close. Not long after, Gemko arrives and hands over the files. They chat for a bit since they haven't seen each other in ages. Suddenly, Tuan sends a message. The meeting is a trap. Gemko didn't know he was followed, but Gonu doesn't trust him anymore. In the end, Gonu leaves, while Gemko gets caught. The chief director is furious about his crew's bad performance. Meanwhile, Tuan starts investigating the surgeon's whereabouts. The doctor is found at a gambling spot, and a chase breaks out, but luckily the doctor is caught. The surgeon is taken to an internet cafe to access his medical history. That way, Tuan can go to the patient's address to make them testify. But it turns out the history was edited 3 hours ago, meaning the address in the files is likely fake. Even so, Tuan Min says there's no other choice but to take the bait. In the end, Tuan Min and Gonu leave the doctor because he's no longer needed. At the same time, the fake Gonu, using voice-changing tech, calls the police and says he'll turn himself in an apartment. Obviously, it's a trap. If the real Gonu shows up there, the police will arrest him immediately. Tuan realizes the apartment must be full of snipers, so he calls dozens of food delivery drivers to send food to the apartment to confuse them. Gonu disguises himself among the drivers and starts looking for the address. Meanwhile, Tuan Min tries to cut the apartment's power to slow down the enemy. Gonu gets caught by the fake Gonu, who's ready to kill him. The intelligence agency's scenario is a suicide case. The public will think the presidential assassin ended his life there. There's also planted evidence to support the accusation, making it undeniable. At the same time, the police arrive faster, and the intelligence agency is forced to confront them, because if the police see two different Gonus in one place, their plan will fall apart. The real Gonu can't fight back because the fake Gonu is too strong for him. In the last moments, Tuan appears from outside the window and opens fire. Everyone's shocked, and one police officer finally enters the room. He's confused, seeing two different Gonus. The real Gonu is wounded, while his double escapes. At the same time, other intel agents confirm their plan has failed because the police know. The place is then blown up as a last resort to cover their failure. Tuan Min, still fighting, gets into a shootout with an intel agent, and both end up dead. The media starts reporting fake news that Gonu and Tuan Min's accomplice committed a suicide bombing. Gemko, who was arrested, is asked to testify that the incident is true if he wants to be free. Meanwhile, Sony Young and Don Bu see their friend's body at the hospital. Elsewhere, the fake Gonu is taken and exiled to a new area to start a new life. But it turns out that's the real Gonu. Tuan Min had already realized that the intelligence agency's plan was absolute because they could manipulate everything. That's why he suggested Gonu switch lives with his double, because that was the only chance he had to live. Gemko appears on TV, giving his false testimony. He has no other choice because he still has a family to support. But when his friends show up, he comes to his senses and takes back everything he said. Gemko screams for help as he's taken back to jail, but no one can help him. The next day, Gonu decides to reveal his identity to the public. He calls Sony Young and asks her to broadcast the news on the radio. Sony Young is shocked and finally connects the call to her live traffic radio show. Gonu introduces himself and explains everything, saying he's been framed. His presence right then becomes strong proof that the previous incident was indeed a conspiracy. High-ranking officials get worried and ask the intelligence agency director to fix the problem immediately. Sony Young and Don Bu plan to gather the media in one place, where Gonu is instructed to show up. But unfortunately, the intelligence agency handles the problem quickly. They track Gonu and stop him as he goes through the sewer. At the same time, police are deployed to disperse the media, telling them the previous radio broadcast was a hoax. In the end, the media leaves. Meanwhile, Gonu is caught by the director and his forces, but it turns out Gonu had planned this. He was waiting for the sewer to open, so the director and his forces there get swept away, while Gonu manages to save himself and climb to the surface. Elsewhere, Sho goes to the police station to check traffic cameras. He got a tip that Gonu would come out through the drainage, and thankfully he succeeded. As Gonu runs, Suwa suddenly shows up to pick him up on the side of the road. Turns out, Sony Young had planned this and asked Suwa for help picking him up. They both arrive at a meeting where the media has gathered. The movie ends with Gonu exposing the facts, and all the truth comes out. I hope you like this story. Please let us know in the comments if you want to see more movie explanations like this. Your suggestions motivate us to keep making more videos. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.